Everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, taking on a fun and exciting episode, guys, this evening as we're revisiting 3DO M2 emulation in MAME. I got a message from my Discord members saying that they had tried the most recent version of MAME, and they were finding on their system at least that Total Vice was basically running at full speed compared to the captures they'd seen me put up online with original hardware. And I hadn't heard any updates on the overall driver for 3DO M2, and there still really doesn't seem to be anything on GitHub whatsoever. But something under the hood in MAME definitely changed, because the last time I took a look at Total Vice on MAME, it was definitely playable, but it wasn't running at full speed. Now it is extremely close to getting exactly there, and I would say it's the first game that's 100% playable on emulation for 3DO M2. If we're good to find involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. Now right now you're watching MAME footage, and I will tell you when we move over to the original 3DO M2 hardware captures, because all the comparisons are going to be against direct hardware from my collection. And I would say here, Total Vice looks and plays exactly like it should. The sound emulation will still hit, so you're not going to get a perfect soundtrack, but as far as the graphics and playability are concerned, it's like a 9 out of 10. Now moving back to the exact same area from my Total Vice original arcade PCB, you can see that the camera movements and the overall game speed seem to be close to 1-to-1. Now there are going to be situations in MAME where it's still going to drop some frames, and it seems to be around the sound emulation, not the actual performance on the CPU or any of the video. It's one of those things, it seems like when it tries to load up more than one sound sample at once, it'll hitch, and that sound hitching causes the game in and of itself to hitch. And because the gameplay is so good and the sound is a little bit iffy, that seems to be what needs to be buttoned up here. As we move back over to MAME again, I love seeing this stuff because I've been telling you to play Total Vice and 3DO M2 games since the beginning of this channel, but I understand outside of having original hardware, which is very hard to source, MAME is the de facto way to play these rare arcade games, and now this is just a playable experience that's so exciting to me. And before you ask, none of the other games are showing these signs of improvements. Tobey Polystars, if anything, seems a little bit slower than it used to before. Now as we do a direct side-by-side comparison, MAME on the left and 3DO M2 on the right, I have synced these up to a blood splatter effect on the wall that is a constant, because this is a fluid game and it isn't locked off. Trying to get the footage to sync is difficult in and of itself, but pay attention to that stack of soup cans over there, that 10% discount, a real big discount indeed. You're going to see a guy fall down from the vent in the ceiling, and he's going to hit that back wall, and that is 100% the same frame rate as the original hardware. You're going to see situations within MAME now with 3DO M2 and Total Vice where it is 1-to-1 with the original hardware on the speed, and that is something we could never say before. Last time I talked about 3DO M2 emulation, I said that with a fast CPU, you might get 70 to 75% of the overall speed in gameplay. Now, in a lot of chunks of Total Vice, you're getting 1-to-1 with real hardware, and that is impressive considering the 3DO M2 never came out as a home console. Now, I'm still not sure what's actually going on here. Like I said, it is an improvement, but I can't find any notes. So if you see any notes online, leave me a link down below. As we move back over to original hardware again, these are looking near to 1-to-1, and that is absolutely incredible because I want everyone to go out and play Total Vice. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it is exceedingly rare, and arcade cabinets are basically extinct. And that is always fun to be able to tell you guys you can play a game that you never thought you could play before. Now, as far as the specs of my PC, I'm running an i9-12900K overclock, so you're definitely going to have to bring a relatively beefy CPU along for the ride if you want to get these results, and I doubt you can brute force this any faster than it currently is. And again, it seems to be down to the sound emulation. You'll see in the next side-by-side comparison in just a minute, when the game slows down, it's trying to play different sound effects, because this game was spooling in data from the CD-ROM and loading some sound effects in from RAM as well. So it's one of those things, it seems like something in the sound emulation is causing it to be ever so slightly slower. But we're going to go to the locked off intro of stage 2, my favorite stage in the game. We're going to pull back from the moon here, and you're going to see as we pan down from the building, MAME on the left, real hardware on the right, we're near to identical here. It's only when this car comes in and the sound effects start playing that you actually get the engine to chug. So it's one of those really weird things. The more corrupted the sound gets, the slower the game gets. When the game sounds fine, it is running full speed compared to original hardware. And I am going to give you a sound sample. The music is quite clear. It's going to hitch here or there, but it's not going to be anything that's going to bother your ears whatsoever. I wouldn't let you listen to that. So go ahead and hear what Total Vice sounds like in MAME today, and I'll be right back with more footage to compare. So obviously that music isn't playing perfectly, but the sound quality is good. It just seems to hitch, and if you're wondering where the sound effects are, they don't seem to be working currently. The gunshot sound effect, as well as all of the enemies, would have been loaded into RAM from ROMs on the chip, so they could basically play whenever they wanted and didn't need to spool off of the CD-ROM, because there is a subboard on the actual PCB that has sound sample ROMs that could be read from and put into RAM as the game plays. So that seems to be something missing here. But again, as we look at this MAME footage, the overall motion when you're playing the game is amazing, and that is again exciting for me because I want everyone to play this. The 3DO M2 is one of those pieces of hardware that's so rare. I'm known for having a bunch of them, but it is near impossible to actually buy. As we move over to my original hardware capture again, this is one area in this office that seems to struggle the most. I think that's because it's trying to play those broken glass sound effects in the background. There's something about the sound effects coming in, especially in the glass area, that slow things down. As you'll see here, if we move back over to MAME in the same office area, it is going to chug a little bit more here, and that's because a lot of this environment is destructible, and it seems like when those destruction sound effects come out, it'll lower the in-engine speed. Maybe it's just hitching on trying to load it in, because when you do load in a level from the actual main menu, you get some sound skipping, and it also slows down all of your controls, which is something that doesn't happen on an original PCB. But the great part is Total Vice is very close to completely playable on MAME. You can go through the entire game, you can play it, you can enjoy it, and I would never know this if it wasn't one of my Discord members sending me a note, because I hadn't seen any updates. So honestly, I don't usually go back in and check on games I've already talked about if I don't get some sort of update in regards to the MAME drivers. And again, it is just an amazing thing that MAME exists, because all of the games on the 3DO M2 are exceedingly rare. The only arcade cabinet I know for one of these games is in Japan. There is a Tobe Polystars there, as well as one Evil Knight. But for the other three games, I don't know of a single arcade in the world that has one on the game floor. Now, comparing the third level, this locked up intro side by side, we have MAME on the left and we have the 3DO M2 again on the right. You're going to see that the camera is going to do a hard cut in game, and it's going to do that hard cut on the exact same frame. That means at least up until this point in time, it is doing everything one-to-one. Every cycle from the original hardware is being replicated here on MAME. They will get out of sync pretty quickly, but this is getting so close. If we can get that far in incomplete emulation, where the game board and the emulation are acting one-to-one, then you know things are looking up. So hopefully sometime soon in the next year or two, somebody takes a closer look at the sound emulation on the 3DO M2 in MAME, because I really do feel like that is kind of the golden ticket to getting this thing running completely. And something like Tobe Polystars definitely running slower, and the sound seems to have a little bit more of an issue, so maybe something updated in the sound driver, or maybe even the PowerPC implementation within MAME was updated and just so happens to bring some improvements over to Total Vice, and that is definitely not something to complain about whatsoever. I absolutely love MAME, and I love that it preserves all of these 3D games, because for the most part, pretty much any 2D game you can think of from arcades back in the day works 100% in MAME. We've been seeing a lot of improvements on the 3D side as well. Namco System 22 and 23 had a lot of vast improvements on MAME 271, which is how I'm playing this today, and it seems like Total Vice did as well, and that is just making me so happy. And I would say this one area right here, when we get to the boat and actually have the shootout on water, it's probably the best performing in the entire game. Maybe it's just because it doesn't have many sound effects, maybe it's because there's not as much on screen, but this right here feels exactly like it should if I was playing my original Total Vice PCB, and that is absolutely incredible. And the best part is in MAME, this is the medium resolution version of the game versus the standard resolution version of the game I captured because I don't have a 24 kilohertz monitor. But one last look of the original PCB, and you can see outside of the difference in colors, that's because this is an analog signal going into a super gun, and these basically have a very close approximation one-to-one from the original hardware to MAME, and that for 3DO M2 is going to be huge because there's only 5 games on this arcade board, but they're 5 of the rarest games out there. And one day MAME's going to be able to play all 5 of them near to perfect, if not perfectly, and everyone's going to be able to enjoy the 3DO M2 arcade games like I do at home with my large collection. That's all I ever hope. You guys can enjoy the exact same fun that I enjoy when I'm playing the game. But short of that, give Total Vice a try. Let me know what happens on your system. Again, you're going to need a relatively big CPU with a lot of speed on the primary core to get this to work the same way I did. And I have not changed my system specs since the last time I tested, so something has improved, and that's amazing. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.